A young Filipino boy named Mateo walked timidly onto the massive America's Got Talent stage, his tiny footsteps echoing in the vast silence of the theater. The bright spotlights almost blinded him, and he squinted as he looked out into the audience. His clothes were simple, an old white shirt and slightly torn jeans, but his heart was full of courage. The crowd whispered softly, unsure what to expect. He seemed too young, too fragile, and too poor to belong on such a glamorous stage. Yet there was something in his eyes, an innocence and quiet determination that caught everyone's attention. Simon Cowell leaned forward, his chin resting on his hand, observing the boy with a mix of curiosity and empathy. The host asked gently, "What's your name, sweetheart?" Mateo's small voice trembled as he replied, "My name is Mateo, sir. I come from the Philippines." His accent was thick but sweet, and his nervous smile melted hearts. When asked what he would be performing, he simply said, "A song for my mom." Those few words changed the entire mood of the hall. The murmurs stopped. The lights dimmed slightly. There was a heavy silence that felt sacred. The music began softly, a slow piano melody that sounded like a lullaby. Mateo gripped the microphone tightly, his knuckles white, and took a deep breath. His first note was gentle, almost fragile, like a whisper from a child who'd seen too much pain. But as he sang the next line, his voice grew steadier, filled with emotion that was far beyond his years. Each word carried a lifetime of struggle, love, and longing. The lyrics spoke of a little boy who missed his mother, who worked hard every day just to survive, who dreamed of giving her a better life. The audience sat still, completely captivated. Some people wiped their eyes quietly. His voice was unlike anything they had heard before, pure, soulful, and honest. He wasn't performing to impress anyone, he was singing to release something deep inside him. His song was his story. The judges exchanged glances, stunned by the emotional power that poured from such a small child. The lights shimmered gently, and the camera zoomed in on Mateo's tear-filled eyes as he sang with his whole heart. The room no longer felt like a competition, it felt like a prayer. As the song reached its chorus, the entire atmosphere shifted. The soft piano gave way to a sweeping orchestral arrangement, and Mateo's voice rose with it, soaring, trembling, breaking, and rebuilding itself. The spotlight focused solely on him. He closed his eyes, lifted his head slightly, and sang as though he were calling out to the heavens. His voice carried the weight of every sacrifice his mother had made, every hungry night, every tear she had hidden from him. The lyrics told the story of hope in despair, of light in darkness, of love that survives poverty. People in the crowd gasped when his voice cracked with emotion, then cheered as he pushed through, hitting the next note perfectly. The judges were speechless. Simon's eyes, often cold and analytical, softened with rare emotion. Howie Mandel covered his mouth, visibly moved. Sofia Vergara wiped her tears, whispering something to Heidi. And the audience, every single person, was standing by the time he sang the final chorus. The air buzzed with energy, the kind that only pure authenticity can create. It was more than music, it was truth in sound. When the last note ended, there was a long, trembling silence before the applause exploded like thunder. Mateo stood frozen, his little chest rising and falling quickly. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. People were clapping for him, cheering his name, crying because of his song. He pressed his hands together in gratitude, bowing again and again. The judges rose to their feet. Heidi was the first to speak, her voice shaky. "Mateo," she said, "that was not just singing. That was a miracle. You touched everyone's heart." The audience agreed, cheering louder. Sophia added, "You have the kind of voice that makes people feel something deep inside. You are very, very special." Howie said softly, "You made us forget this is a show. You made us remember what real music feels like." Then Simon leaned closer to the microphone. His tone was calm but serious. "Mateo," he began, sometimes a performance is more than just talent. It's about honesty. What you did here tonight was real. You sang not to win but to survive. And that's why." He paused, looked around the hall, and slowly stood up. The crowd went silent again, anticipating what was about to happen. Simon reached out his hand, smiled slightly, and slammed the golden buzzer. The sound filled the room, and an eruption of cheers followed instantly. Golden confetti burst from the ceiling, raining down on the little boy who now stood crying on the stage. Mateo's hands flew to his face as tears streamed down. He couldn't hold back the emotion. The host ran to him, wrapping him in a warm hug as the music swelled triumphantly. The other judges stood, clapping and smiling through tears. Simon walked up to the stage, shaking his head in disbelief, then knelt down to meet Mateo's eyes. "You deserve this," he said gently. "You reminded all of us why we do this show." Mateo, still sobbing, could barely whisper a thank you. His voice broke, and he said softly, "This is for my mom." The crowd responded with a collective sigh, their hearts completely melted. Cameras flashed everywhere as people recorded the unforgettable moment. The golden confetti continued to fall, sparkling like magic dust. Mateo looked up at the ceiling, his face lit with golden light, his tears shining. It was the moment every dreamer wishes for, a moment where pain turns into beauty. The audience's cheers echoed through the hall. Some people were holding each other, crying openly. Even Simon looked emotional, blinking hard as he smiled at the boy. The host announced over the music, "Mateo, you are going straight to the live shows." The little boy gasped, his hand over his heart, unable to believe what had just happened. He turned once more toward the crowd, waved shyly, and whispered, "Thank you, everyone. Thank you." The camera zoomed in on his face as he smiled through his tears, golden confetti sticking to his hair and clothes. It was the image of pure triumph, innocence wrapped in glory. Backstage, as the doors closed behind him, the roar of the crowd still echoed in his ears. Mateo clutched the small golden confetti piece in his hand like it was treasure. His mother's picture was in his pocket, and he whispered, "We did it, Mama." For him, this wasn't about fame. It was about proving that even the poorest child, with nothing but a voice and a dream, could move the world. The show's producers wiped their eyes as they watched the playback on the screen. They knew this performance would become one of the most memorable moments in AGT history. Mateo stood quietly in the backstage hallway, the golden lights still reflecting off his tear-streaked face. A few staff members came up to congratulate him, but he barely spoke. He just kept looking up, whispering prayers of thanks. In that moment, he wasn't just a contestant, he was a symbol of hope for millions of children like him, living in poverty but daring to dream. He showed that music could break barriers, that truth could win hearts, and that miracles could come from the unlikeliest places. The crowd outside continued chanting his name, the echo filling the air long after he had left the stage. That night, social media exploded with clips of his performance. People around the world watched, cried, and shared his story. Comment sections filled with words like inspirational, unbelievable, and soul-touching. News outlets called him the Golden Boy from the Philippines. In every post, one moment stood out, the little boy looking up as gold rained down, whispering, "This is for you, Mama." It became an image of love, resilience, and faith. Mateo's life had changed forever. From a street boy in the Philippines who once sang for coins to feed himself, he had now touched the hearts of millions. The stage lights had faded, but the warmth of his song lingered in every soul that heard it. And in that everlasting silence after applause, the world was reminded of something beautiful, that even the smallest voice, when filled with truth and love, can move mountains and bring the entire world to tears.